Lucy, please obey Helen." Lucy nodded and cried as she saw how the stretcher with her grandmother disappeared into the ambulance. Her neighbour Helen tried her best to calm the girl down. "Lucy, don't cry. Grandma will be cured, and she will come back to you." "I know," the girl replied. "It's just that I feel so much pity for Grandma." Helen looked at Lucy carefully. She had known her grandmother Ruth for a long time, but the girl had come to live with her only recently. Ruth's son died when Lucy was only 2 years old, and her mother took the child to her homeland, somewhere very far away, 1,000 kilometers away. But then the girl's mother passed away too, and Lucy stayed to live there with her other grandmother, who was already very old. The two grandmothers frequently called each other, and then it was time for Lucy to go to school. But in the remote village where she lived, there was no such opportunity, and the school was very far away. So the grandmothers discussed and decided that it would be better for Lucy to be in the city with Ruth. That's how Lucy came here. Helen took the girl to her apartment and explained that she would have to stay with her for a while. The woman reassured Lucy, saying that she could bring her everything she might need. The girl nodded meekly and asked her neighbour to let her take her flower with her. "Sure, bring it. But unfortunately, my flowers don't grow at my place for some reason. Aren't you afraid your flower won't be well here either?" asked Helen. "I'm not afraid. They don't grow because they lack your love. They are alive and feel everything," said the girl, and went over to the violets standing on the windowsill. Helen was very fond of violets and hoped that they would bloom for her as they should. But for almost a year she had done everything, but violets not only did not bloom, but grew very slowly. Lucy stroked each leaf and whispered something softly. Helen looked at her fascinated for a few minutes and then, shaking her head, returned to her household chores. In the evening, Lucy called her grandmother. "Grandma, I'm fine. Helen said we're coming to visit you on Sunday." They talked some more, and the girl, after saying goodbye, handed the phone to Helen and went to bed. As she fell asleep, she heard Helen talking with Ruth for a long time, and she thought about how kind this Helen was and how good she felt at her place. In the morning, Helen got up early to prepare a delicious breakfast for Lucy. She entered the kitchen and froze. Something subtly changed around her, but she could not figure out what it was. Suddenly, she glanced at the windowsill and gasped. All the violets had budded. Helen could not believe her eyes. She stared at this miracle for a long time, unable to believe her eyes, and then she looked in surprise toward the room where Lucy was sleeping. The woman poured herself a cup of coffee and wondered. Ruth had told her that Lucy's other grandmother was something like a local healer or fortune teller who treated people and helped them in difficult situations, and the girl had learned something from her. Helen had never come across such people before and did not trust such stories, but now she did not know what to believe. She knew one thing. Yesterday, Lucy had touched the flowers with her hand, and today, just overnight, buds had appeared on them, and it was hard to find a rational explanation. On Sunday, Lucy woke up early because she had to visit her grandmother in the hospital, and she was very worried. She had been in the hospital once before, when she was very young, but she remembered almost nothing. All that remained in her memory were her mother's eyes filled with pain and pity, and that feeling of longing, hopelessness, and fear was something that the girl also remembered for the rest of her life. Helen and Lucy went into the market to buy her grandmother some fruit, and the girl confidently led the neighbour to one elderly saleswoman. "These," the girl pointed at the apples. "And why these particular ones? Look, they are much bigger apples and prettier ones." Helen wondered. "No," said Lucy stubbornly, "these are good because they're kind." Helen asked nothing more and simply bought these apples, and they went to the hospital. Ruth was sitting on the bed and wondering again, remembering how she had managed to break her arm with a dislocation. She was still kicking herself for getting up on that stool to hang the curtains, even though she knew it swayed a little. "I could have gone to the kitchen to get another, but I was too lazy, and this is the result. I frightened Lucy, and of course I frightened myself too." At that moment, Ruth heard her roommate moaning. Ruth turned and asked if she needed help, and the woman asked in a weak voice to adjust her pillow. Ruth came over and, with a quick movement of her healthy hand, fixed the pillow, which made the woman sigh with relief. "Thank you. My strength is gone. I wish I could go to the next world and not torture anyone." "Felicity, how can you say that? Your daughter comes to you every day. She worries, but you are speaking like that. You should not give up. You have to fight," sternly said Ruth. "Do you think I do not want to live?" cried Ruth's neighbour. "But I feel sorry for my daughter. I think about her all the time. She has 2 children at home, and she's been tormented by me for a year now. I am only 50 years old, but I cannot even stand up, and no one can diagnose." Ruth wanted to say something, but did not have time. The door swung open, and Lucy ran into the room. "Grandma!" The girl ran up to her grandmother and gently hugged her. "Honey, I missed you so much." "Me too. Helen and I bought you some kind of apples. They are kind because they grew where love was. They're the tastiest." Ruth smiled. Helen came into the room and asked Lucy in surprise how she found the right ward. "I just felt it," the girl shrugged. While Helen and her grandmother were talking, Lucy kept her eyes on her grandmother's wardmate. The woman was wiping away her tears, but they kept rolling and rolling. Suddenly, the girl picked up an apple and walked over to that sick woman. Helen and Ruth, seeing this, became silent. Lucy said hello and handed the apple to Felicity. "Take it, please." The woman tried to take the fruit, but her fingers wouldn't obey, and then Lucy helped her bend her fingers and wrap her arms around the apple. "Thank you, darling," muttered the woman. "You're welcome," replied Lucy, and stroked the woman's hand. Felicity looked wide-eyed into Lucy's eyes, and the girl smiled and went back to her grandmother, wishing Felicity a speedy recovery. The woman watched Lucy, and then, imperceptibly for herself, she ate the whole apple. Looked at the stump with surprise. She put it on the night table and immediately fell asleep. Ruth's visitors had left long ago, but Felicity was still asleep, and Ruth decided not to disturb her. The night was surprisingly quiet. Felicity did not moan a single time. Ruth even came up to Felicity a couple of times and checked to see if she was breathing, but she just slept peacefully. The next morning, Ruth woke up only when breakfast was brought. A young nurse, Anne, put the food on Ruth's bedside table, and then she turned to Felicity and froze with surprise. The woman looked better than usual. "Anne, it's amazing, but today I feel starving," said Felicity and smiled. "Finally, how can you get better if you don't eat anything?" Anne wanted to feed Felicity, but the woman refused and said she would try to manage on her own. Ruth and Anne looked at each other in surprise but did not argue. The nurse silently watched as Felicity heroically tries to hold a spoon and was ready at any moment to come to her aid. But Felicity still managed. When the plates were empty, Felicity thanked and immediately fell asleep. After a while, the attending physician came to the ward, and he had been examining Felicity for a long time, asked different questions, and could not believe that Felicity suddenly felt better. Before dinner, Felicity pulled out her phone and dialed her daughter's number. She asked her to bring her a pineapple because she suddenly craved it so much. Her daughter arrived an hour later. Felicity was sitting on the bed, and Ruth was unaccustomed to seeing her so lively because usually she just lay there and moaned. "Mom, I missed you so much, and I'm so happy that you feel better," said Felicity's daughter, smiling through her tears. "Oh, honey, I'm so tired of the hospital, and I miss my normal life, you and the grandchildren. I feel I'm on the mend." The woman laughed happily and hugged her mother. Ruth went out of the room for a walk and heard the nurses discussing the strange, unexpected changes that had occurred in Felicity's health. As Ruth realized from their conversation, the woman was predicted by doctors to live a couple of months. She almost did not eat and did not get up for a long time, and now suddenly there was a real miracle. 3 days passed. Ruth was getting ready to be discharged for further home treatment. Helen and Lucy were waiting for her outside, and Ruth leisurely packed her belongings. "Felicity, don't stay here too long. It is a true saying that the walls of home are a help." "Oh, of course. I want to go home so much. But the doctors won't let me go. They're still checking me out," said the woman and laughed. "Can I ask you a question?" "Of course you may ask, but I know what you would like to ask." "So I'm right then. Was it your granddaughter who helped me?" Ruth sat down and, after a moment's thought, told Felicity about Lucy's second grandmother. Felicity listened and went out to walk Ruth out. When she saw Lucy, she hugged her and, making sure no one could hear her, whispered in her ear, "Thank you, sweetheart." "You're welcome," Lucy smiled and ran up to her grandmother. "Grandma, let's go home soon."